President Forum. This is going to be the first meeting. We're going to have two sessions. So this is the first one. Welcome everybody. The intention is to have well, presidents, vice presidents, decision makers, in order to have a dialogue on specific topics that we'll be discussing in the two sessions. As always, we're short in time, but I would like to ask briefly to each of you present yourself one by one, but it's going to be like really 20 seconds for you just to say your name and organization that you represent, so we can be more informal in that sense in order to trigger a dialogue. So if fine with you, we can start with you, Hilge, and we go around. Well, I started with myself. My name is Raúl Valdés. I come from the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning.
Thank you. My name is Ili Trantland. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities, here with my President, Andrew Heath, and very pleased as an IAU to be a partner to this very important conference with great conversations.
Hi, almost good afternoon. I'm Tilak. Nice one. Yeah. Tilak. From Sri Lanka, the President and the Vice Chancellor of the Open University of Sri Lanka. We have 48,000 students and 28 regional centers throughout the country, and it's the largest public sector university in Sri Lanka.
Hello, I'm Deus Ngaruko, Deputy Vice Chancellor responsible for academics, research and consultants from the Open University of Tanzania, the only open university in East Africa. Of course, last month we received one from Kenya, the newly established Open University. We are purely distance and online.
Good morning, my name is Francis Calvo, you saw already the stage, and I'm the director of the UNESCO International Institute for Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean, based in Caracas, Venezuela. Our institute is mostly a capacity development and research.
Good day, my name is Sunungurai Chingarande. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Women's University in Africa, based in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
My name is Gu Hongliang from Eastern China Normal University, China, the Vice President, be responsible for international cooperation.
I'm Johanna Nangeli. I'm President Rector of the University of Menunga, one of the 13 public universities in Tunis. I'm also Vice President of the International Association of Universities and the lead of the working group on sustainable development for universities.
As Hilge said, I'm Andrew Deeks. I'm the President of the International Association of University, but also the President and Vice Chancellor of Murdoch University in Perth, Western Australia. I have to apologise in advance that I'll be leaving you about 12:30 to go and catch a flight, but it's been a pleasure to be part of this conference and now part of this roundtable. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Michael Fang. I lead the Institute for the Future Education at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. We have 26 campuses with 90,000 students, a very large university. And at the Institute, we're looking at transformation of higher education and lifelong learning, as I shared during my presentation yesterday. So really pleased to be with you here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yuan Wen, President of Shanghai Open University. I'm very proud I was the President of Shanghai Open University for 6 years.
Good afternoon, please. My name is Boran Chakrul. I'm Acting Director for the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, and I'm also Director for the Division for Policy and Lifelong Learning System at UNESCO headquarters that oversees, among others, higher education. Thank you.
to Shanghai. Welcome to SOU. Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting. I will go then to the second round, so let's go there.
Okay, my name is Beate Herr. I'm Vice President of the European Network for University Lifelong Learning, UCAN. We have strong links, and I'm the ambassador for the RECLA, for the Latin American Network, and I'm at the University of Mainz, Gutenberg University in Germany.
Hi everybody, my name is Susanna Karahanyan. I'm Emeritus President of the International Network of Politicians Agencies in Higher Education, which is a global umbrella network for all accreditors, joining all the regions globally and accreditors together. And I'm also Director of Policy and Regulation in Abu Dhabi government, so nice to be here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Altamu Mujita from Ethiopia, from the Technical and Vocational Training Institute there. It's the only higher teaching vocational institute there, and nice to be here.
Hi, I'm Ratif, Acting Director of Department of International Affairs of Sukhothai Thammathirat Open University. Thank you.
Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. Paz Portales from the UNESCO Higher Education section.
Good afternoon. I'm Shraya Hani Saleh from the Policy Division of the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. So basically, in Malaysia, the Ministry of Higher Education is in charge as the co-driver, as the main driver of the acculturation of lifelong learning. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Renee, and I'm Director of Research at the Institute for Adult Learning in Singapore, which is the National Institute for Adult Workforce Learning. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Would like just to start then with the topic. As you know, we will discuss briefly some measuring progress and impact of lifelong learning in and through higher education. The idea is really to have a dialogue, to learn a little bit from your experiences based on two small presentations we'll make, one myself, the other one will be Michael, that we have been trying to find ways to measure progress. We have not a concrete suggestion on it. I think it's more this kind of dialogue. Where can we go based on the experiences, based on the already research that you have been conducting on this topic. So without further delay, I would like to start my presentation very much based on the research we did with SOU on how our experience from this international survey on how lifelong learning has been reflected in higher education institutions. So I will take some minutes to make my presentations, and then I will leave the floor to Michael, and then we can start our dialogue. So, well, as you know, we have this production of a result of our research, and we produced two documents already, two research documents. One was launched in Chinese yesterday, and it's the survey that we conducted. The focus of the presentation is going to be more right now on the methodology and the values that collect the data, and how we more or less managed to get information, what were the challenges in the research. So let me go into the next one. I can move from here. Can I go to the next? Yeah, it's like, it's, yeah, right. Okay, so, well, important to say that the main question and issues which guided our research were to explore how universities and other higher education institutions contribute to lifelong learning and providing learning to people from different backgrounds and at different stages of their lives. To gather data on this topic, we follow a mixed method approach involving the survey and institutional case studies. So there were two things. The survey more on the quantitative analysis and the cases very much on the qualitative analysis. So for that we had partners, mainly the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, the International Association for Universities with their big network, and the Shanghai Open University. And all the work support very much with UNESCO IAP, UNESCO ESAL, that were commenting on the survey and giving their feedback and advice. We were able to develop of the survey following several steps. First, we pilot a phase in April to May 2020 with 18 higher education institutions, completing the pilot study, integrating feedback, and finalizing the question. Then the survey included a glossary of terms to support the quality of data gathered. Even if including the survey, you can imagine that a lot of things related to definitions were really a challenge. We launched the full survey in October 2020 until January 2021, and as I said before, this was in the time of COVID.
So not 24 and 21.
Well, that was quite a lot. It's 2021, yeah. That's what's an open, sorry for that. And 44 questions and a large amount of sub-questions, of course.
Future vision, yes.
Yeah. Well, we had a total of 399 response from 96 countries, and a lot of promotion through newsletters, social media, mailing by partners, in order really to motivate the response. So we go to next one, please. Well, based on the overall research, interest, the survey covered questions on three different levels. The national policy environments that influence lifelong learning in higher education. Number two, existing institutional strategies and governance structures, including quality assurance and funding mechanisms. And number three, in terms of implementation, we focus mainly on diverse learning provision, flexible learning pathways, technology-enhanced learning, community engagement, and partnership. Next one, please. When it comes to the more concrete results, the national policy environment, we highlight some results to also show these challenges of data collection. So, in terms of national legislation, 68.2% for institutions stated that national legislation in the country defines lifelong learning as a mission of higher education. We have to consider that we had varying responses in this one from the same country on these questions. We went with the most selected options in these cases, and just to indicate that the definition of lifelong learning as a mission of higher education can be interpreted in different ways. Interestingly, the 6 cases that we worked later indicated a lack of comprehensive policy for lifelong learning in higher education. So it is more common that there is legislation with a specific focus, like continuing education. And this emphasis on continuing education really shows that sometimes they are understood as synonyms. But lifelong learning is really continuous education in many universities. Following this, it may be interesting to include an open-ended question about the definition of lifelong learning in higher education to learn more about that varying understanding of the concept. Next one, please. Well, when it comes to institute strategies, we can see that 68% of surveyed institutions stated to have a strategy for lifelong learning in place at some level. So this is moving to the more institutional level. And from the 6 cases, we can see that lifelong learning can be reflected in various institutions' strategic documents. The case studies reveal also that in several instances, even though it started in the survey that institutional strategy exists, this strategy really appeared that it's referred to specific document, but not really as a materialized policy. So this also suggests that the understood of what is an institutional lifelong learning strategy may be interpreted in different ways. In addition, the topic of quality assurance needs to be really worth exploring in more detail in a future survey, because just only 59% of the survey institutions responded to have some kind of quality assurance mechanism established for lifelong learning. So, next one please. Then we go to the target groups, to the implementation part. From the survey we can see that most target groups are working people requiring upskilling. I'm talking about 89%. Public and private organizations, 84%, and women, 82%, followed by higher education staff. The more vulnerable groups are much less targeted, and based on these results, it could be interesting to explore further what kind of learning offers are available specifically for particularly groups, such as rural population, indigenous groups, refugees, older learners, etc. The other one was flexible learning formats and alternative credentials. And with the hype of micro-credentials and other forms of flexible certification, it will be interesting to explore further what quality assurance mechanisms are linking to these. There was a big response to the use of MOOCs, very little of AI, but also I need to say that was almost a year ago, so that has been changed already a lot. When it comes to flexible learning pathways, RPL could be also interesting to shifting the focus from available pathways and services to data on learners who make use of it. How many, which groups, it's something that we don't have and could be interesting. When it comes to technology-enhanced learning, with rapid developments in the field, it would be interesting to gather more data on which new tools are applied and how are linked to quality assurance. When it comes to engagement with local communities, it would be interesting to widen the focus from types of lectures, research, collaboration, and types also of partners. I'm thinking about universities, NGOs, etc. To the purpose of community engagement, the benefits and impact of citizenship education initiatives. So, it's more or less a glance of what the kind of information we try to gather, the challenges we're facing, and how to move on that, at least from our perspective. Would be, we have received very good feedback on the international survey report, stating also the usefulness and importance of this kind of data, and I think it has been a good possibility to continue the dialogue and to continue, if possible, enriching the data. For our following discussion, it would be interesting to discuss what kind of data is most needed, how it can be best collected, not only probably through higher education institution responses, but also linking it to other kind of sources. It also suggests to shift the interest to include more questions on outcomes and impact of lifelong learning initiatives, which will make also a lot of sense to the understanding of lifelong learning. I mean, really how lifelong learning is making a change. I'll leave it there, and just as I said, I have more questions in a way than very concrete solutions to the topic. But with this, I will move to Michael and give you the floor, if you can share a little bit of your experience on it.
Where's the other presenters? Oh, somebody's remotely controlling.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
It's chat GTP. Yeah. There was a presentation of
there's something moving, but oh, there you go. we are preparing the slides, let me just give you the context. This was work that I did in my previous role. So prior to my move to Mexico, I led the Skills Future movement in Singapore. I was the Deputy Chief Executive of Skills Future Singapore Agency, an agency that reported to the Ministry of Education. So this is in the context of the work. And first I want to congratulate Raul, your institute, and the team for carrying out a very ambitious study with 400 respondents around the world. That's very impressive. This sharing that in the next few minutes is a little bit more at a micro level within a smaller context, but it comes from a university system, institutional perspective. Again, no answers, no quick answers, but just sharing with you the journey we took and some of the learning points we had. So the context here is, given the increasing investments in higher education and lifelong learning in Singapore, there was the desire at the ministry level to really understand what was the impact they were making in that space. And that's what policymakers always ask. In exchange for the investments, where's the impact? Where's the return on investment? So in April 2018, we formed a working group to look at the impact that universities were making along the missions in the Singapore context. I chaired that working group, and we had high-level representation from different universities at the vice provost, the provost level, and the Ministry of Education was a secretary to that committee. So that was the genesis of the work in Singapore. And as you can see from the terms of reference, we wanted to see what are some of the gaps in measurement systems at that time. And international university rankings, as we all know, is a very poor measure, but it was a widespread measure. And there was even a little bit of a desire to maybe find an alternative ranking system that we could champion to counterbalance the ranking systems that were very much focused just on research. And we wanted to also look at a new area of development at that time, which is around lifelong learning. How do we measure that and become much more precise about the impact of our work in that space? We defined a evaluation framework along these lines. The three common missions of a university: education, research, service, and community. But we added a fourth dimension, which is lifelong learning. And we examined the input factors, the output factors, the outcome factors, and then impact factors. And we tried to define metrics along all these dimensions, as you can imagine, challenging, no doubt. But we were able to produce a report with metrics that attempted to measure all these different areas. And as you can imagine, input factors is easy. How many teachers, how many students, how much investment. Output was relatively easy. And then outcomes were what we defined as short-term impact, right? The immediate outcomes of the intervention. And by impact, we were trying to measure something a bit more longitudinal, time, give it a little bit of time and see what's the impact of these different interventions. As with all surveys and all studies, data availability was constrained, and we entertained the thought of extending that to a global scale, and so having comparable metrics was going to be a major problem. And so here is some, a sense of the kinds of metrics that we came up with: input, output, outcomes. I won't go into the details. So arising from that work, we formed a new task force in September 2019. This is where we were made aware of the work that UIL was doing on your survey, and we invited UIL to be part of the International Advisory Committee, the International Experts Group, again with the intention to eventually implement and roll out this new measure. The Institute for Adult Learning that Renee is from was leading the implementation of that study. Johnny Song, whom many of you might know, was the lead PI for that. We formed a steering committee and an international experts group to help us to refine the process. So as you can see, over the course of 2 years, 2019 to March 2024, 21, we carried out the study. Here we came up with a slightly different framework, but we started looking at lifelong learning in terms of advancing the economy, but also advancing societal well-being. And we saw institutes of higher learning as a key stakeholder, industry and community as the other key stakeholder, in increasing the accessibility and relevance of lifelong learning through partnerships, through capability building, through finding success cases and so on. It's been the conceptual framework for how we conducted this, defined this set of indicators. As you can see, I think there are parallels between this and some of the constructs that Raul shared around looking at strategic intent of institutions, their actual implementation and how they promoted learning, and how they ensured quality, inclusivity, and so on. We piloted this with 4 institutes of higher learning in Singapore, Russia, Australia, and China as a start. Learned from that, and then we rolled out to all 12 higher education institutions in Singapore, and we produced a final report in July 2022. This is masked. You can see the results from across various institutions. One of them is not listed here because of data issues. But the idea was to then create this heat map that showed how were the different institutions doing in the different areas. And this report was shared with the institutes and with the Ministry of Education. Some of the challenges that we faced, definitions of lifelong learning was definitely a key issue. There is a wide range of definitions that we could think about. The time frames of data collection and reference was an issue. And there was also an issue of, are we talking about programs or are we talking about courses? And they could vary quite a bit in terms of outcomes as well. Missing data, breakdown data is another issue. In many universities, the education or the lifelong learning operations are very distributed. So just even collecting data within the university tends to be very challenging. We were also lacking in case studies. We asked for case studies from the institutions, but we didn't get sufficient submissions to run a proper analysis. So at that point in time, the consideration was to run another pilot and include external universities in that process. And some thinking that we should reframe it as a diagnostic and maturity tool rather than trying to take a rankings-based approach to the metrics. One of the key objectives was to help to drive self-reflection within institutions. And the theory of success is if we drive more internal reflection, we will bring about greater levels of improvement in provision of lifelong learning. So I think that's the landing point that we had. I must say that subsequent to the publication of the report, the onus is now in the hands of the Ministry of Education on the next steps forward for the study. So I just want to share with you some of those insights from our experience. Not that we have all the answers, but I think we need collective knowledge, collective experience to advance this area of being more data-driven in our understanding of lifelong learning. Thank you.
Very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Michael, for sharing that. Well, with these pieces of research in the table, we'd like to open the floor to learn a little more about your experience, your understanding about if this could be a tool for self-assessment, a tool for... Okay, so we start with Susanna, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much for 2 beautiful contributions, very important. And if we just put some statistics on it, quality assurance was just over and everywhere, right? So I would like to draw your attention to the work that Intl is currently doing. Yesterday I presented it briefly, but that was actually coming from UNESCO. UNESCO in mid-2000s launched scoping studies for quality assurance in different regions. And it was covering only the external quality assurance and what they are doing. So it started with the Arab states, and then with each cycle it expanded, and in early 2011 or 12, Eastern Europe was already there engaged. And in 2017, UNESCO and Ingwahi joined the efforts and started the global study. So we produced the first, then UNESCO stepped down, but Ingwahi took it forward, and we published the first book on global study on internal and external quality assurance, and this time it brought together all the 7 regions, like Arab states, Asia Pacific, Africa, Latin America and Caribbean, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, all of them were there. And in 2020 we published the book through Brilliant Sense. Now we launched the second round, and this second round we launched like in 2022. Now we're currently in the data collection phase, and we are covering, this is done through Ingwahi, with the engagement of university associations globally. We have, and International University Association is our partner in this, working with us. We also invited regional networks for quality assurance, like ENGWA, APQN, and all the regional CHIA in the US, all of them are under this umbrella. And we're also inviting lots of international organizations who deal with, we are looking through this global study at external quality assurance, the accreditation process, and internal quality assurance of higher education institutions. So both parties, we have 2 surveys for external quality assurance and internal quality assurance of higher education, where lifelong learning is also part of it. And we have also added a module on micro-credentials, how they're managing that element too. Another addition to the survey was a section on the global challenges that are out there, geopolitical challenges, the pandemic and all of this, and how this impacted the performance and how it changed their life. So this is another section that we added. So this survey is administered, 2 surveys are administered in 8 languages, which are the UNESCO official languages, plus from Asia Pacific, there was a request to add another Chinese. We have to, it administered in 2 Chinese languages, like Chinese and Mandarin. And then from Africa, we had a request to administer it also in Portuguese. So this is also administered in Portuguese. So we have a big outreach, and we launched the survey 2nd of September. But the study is not only based on that survey. It has the second phase in 2024. We're launching, based on the survey results, we will do, again, regional focus groups. So I would like to say that from quality assurance perspective, there is this platform which we are able to bring together from higher education institutions, the regional accreditors, and all quality assurance providers out there. And we would like also to see on how this could become a tool that you would be, also everybody would be using. The results of the first global study, which were published in 2020, became actually the background document for UNESCO to produce a report on statistics, on developments in qualifications frameworks and in quality assurance, which was published in Barcelona for the World Higher Education Conference in Barcelona, and lots of references were made from the global study. So this is something that is huge work is done there, and it has a huge outreach. And we're just happy to collaborate with all of you. If you need to include something in the second round, because the surveys are already in process, we're already collecting the data, which includes all these issues that we're discussing here. But also in the second phase, in 2024, we're going to have focus groups. So whatever you feel like is really pertinent to this matter, we could also include in the focus group and further explore it, and invite you as well as an organization to be part of this, different organizations to be part of this global study. So currently we have about 55 persons engaged in drafting, working in different regions globally. We divided them in 7 regions, because we know Europe and West and North America are under one umbrella in UNESCO. But per us, these are two different systems in quality assurance, and even more when Europe joined Bologna process, we know that Eastern Europe is totally different from Western Europe, and Northern Europe is actually moving in a totally different direction. So we capitalize on those, explicit cases that are out there, trends to identify how to learn better from what is going on globally and systemically. So this is one of the things that I want to invite everybody to be part of as a solution to these major things that you're doing.
You're very kind. Thank you very much for sharing this valuable experience, certainly. Thank you. Yes? Please, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you very much. I would like to highlight 3 points that I think are important for our discussion. One is that based on the work that we have conducted, we still don't have a clear model of how higher education institution can be driver for lifelong learning. We have different experiences, but I think the categories that Raoul presented, some of what you, Michael, presented, from the policy level to the governance, to the organization, the funding, the programs, the technology, the engagement with the community. So, but we have a lot of elements. What we are missing probably is what is the journey for a university or higher education institution to move from a non-lifelong learning institution toward a lifelong learning institution. What is the journey? What is the maturity model that we can consider? And based on each of the category, what are the actions that can be taken to move from an initial stage to an advanced stage to a more, I would say, mature stage. So that aspect seems to me important, and part of the work you are referring to, part of the indicators, and also the analysis that we have been conducting. So probably as part of the next step of the work that we can conduct, it could be as a product, a guide for higher education institution to move from a non-lifelong learning institution toward a lifelong learning institution. So that's the first aspect that seems to me important. The second aspect, probably it is more on what do we define a higher education institution as a promoter or vector for lifelong learning. It seems to be more focused on how it is offering learning opportunities for different target groups, which is important. There is also the community engagement, but probably there is also a dimension on how higher education can advance learning in different levels of education. To give an example, today we have a global challenge on early child education. How higher education can advance this in terms of educators, in terms of research, in terms of curriculum, in terms of community engagement. So, but it can be also related to vocational training, it can be related to other aspects. And there is already, an engagement from higher education in this sense. The normal university is a clear example of that, but there could be others. The last point is more socioeconomic. And I'm looking at some of the countries here represented where sometimes 60%, sometimes 80% of the economy is an informal economy, where in most cases the workforce is in informal employment. And this is not only an economic question, it's also a social question, because it's the most disadvantaged that are in the informal economy. In some cases it's gender challenges, in some cases these are rural livelihoods. And the question is, while we are speaking about AI, we are speaking about Industry 4.0, etc., which is very important and probably higher education institution will have to deal with. But what universities are doing in this case? What are the actions that are taken? How, in this placing universities in lifelong learning perspective, we are addressing those challenges? These are something that we cannot underestimate, because from the data we have, the informal economy is not shrinking. We have no evidence that the informal economy is shrinking. And even the gig economy includes informal employment and unfortunately informal economy from Uber Eats to other Deliveroo, etc. So the question is how higher education institutions can deal with this phenomena, particularly in developing economies where the informal economy is a structural part of the economy, and it is driving growth, but it's driving revenues. Sometimes this is the most important part of the livelihoods. So these are, I would say, issues that didn't come from our discussion, but I feel we will need to take into account also in the work going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Brian, for sharing this view with these important three elements. I'll give the floor then to Beate.
Yeah, thank you very much. I try to answer or come back to the challenges Michael Fung mentioned. Definitions, missing data, and case studies are lacking. So the answer from the European perspective could be definitions. There are a lot of studies under the big Horizon Europe program. So my network on University Lifelong Learning in Europe, we are trying to collect an overview of what is on the table when it comes to definitions. First point. Second point, missing data. Also here, the answer lies in trying to get an overview of what is, through projects, research, and so on, already on the European table. I'm only talking about Europe. Case studies, same thing. We have a big project, and I'm coming back to first point of Borin Chakrun. What is the journey? Well, the journey could be one answer, the B-Flex project we did within UCAN, trying to answer the question, how can we transform to university lifelong learning? Universities, higher educations. How can we become lifelong learning universities? So the B-Flex program was one try to answer this. And there are more studies. So we are ready to share, if we get the money, to have research on what is on the table, to get a meta study. We will love to share this with you. And when it comes to your second questions, my answer would be we have to organize a structured dialogue. Taking your example when it comes to children lacking education or whatever, we need to offer something like under the third mission umbrella, like a children university. This is one measure to be concrete. Yeah, to have children universities. We have that, for example, in Germany. And we combine it with teacher education. And we combine this with our undergraduate teacher education students. So we try to really do lifelong learning, having all target groups of this angle. We have the children, we have the students, and we have the teachers. And I think if you also have the government or policymakers, stakeholders on the table, at a round table, and organize a structured dialogue, this could be a holistic approach to solve this. But we need to organize those structured dialogues. I'm from Germany. We have tried to link the higher education institution sector with the vet sector. When you go to the commission, there are two different directeurs general, one for higher education, one for vet. So this doesn't make sense. So what we try to do is we send one of us to the higher education institution for lifelong learning and one to the vet section, and then try to organize a dialogue once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Francesco.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take the floor unless there is someone. Oh, okay, good. Just two comments. One is about the. I mean, I think that the question on the table is about what next could be done, and I think that certainly the survey plays a major role. I think that at least in our case, we have been using the results to engage in a conversation with a number of universities, including as well the ones that are in RECLA, okay, so are also connected with MCAN. Nevertheless, I think that if a second version is in the pipeline, there are certainly at least 3 areas that we have that I think people engaged in the conversation would like to see reflected in the survey, because it's a way of also understanding how others define what lifelong learning is from the perspective of what universities are doing. And basically these are 3 things. First, what kind of fields or areas are covered? Meaning by that, at least in Latin America, most of what is done under the lifelong learning perspective has to do with the needs of companies and mostly at the postgraduate level. So I think that it wouldn't be a surprise to find out that the lifelong learning covers mostly the area of management and all that, leaving aside other important areas like health, for instance. Okay? That's one very important point. The second one is about the share of students and the profiles of the students that are considered to be part of the lifelong learning activity of universities. I think that just mapping out exactly, what kind of profiles different universities have under the umbrella of lifelong learning, that would help us to unfold the concept of lifelong learning by looking not really at the desiderata, but rather at what is going on. And finally, I think that the big question here is, as always, money talks. So how much of your current expenditure could be said to be, devoted to lifelong learning? And it will be very interesting to see, how this evolves over time. So that when it comes to this survey. But I think that UNESCO has to, this is probably a conversation that we can have somewhere else, but certainly UNESCO has to serve the needs of institutions, not only by providing data, which is good, but also clarifying our position about what rankings are and what are the benefits of participating in those rankings, because soon there will be a ranking on lifelong learning, and I think that when it comes to the Global South, we have to begin with a price tag. These rankings are run by commercial companies, and UNESCO has to say clearly that they may have a role to play, but certainly when you have to pay an enormous amount of money to be part of a ranking, then the validity of the results are under suspicion, at least from our perspective. Now, going beyond that, I don't mind, people are enjoying, and even ourselves, when we are requested, how good is this university? Immediately you start looking at the rankings, because that's probably a very relevant source of information, although limited. Now, I think that UNESCO would need to promote a different approach, and I think that Michael has mentioned this in passing. I think that institutions need more self-assessment tools that can be considered part of their journey towards improving what they do under the umbrella of lifelong learning. I think that by really proposing a self-evaluation tool, UNESCO and its partners could really develop a much more in-depth approach to what lifelong learning from the perspective of higher education is, and also engage in a process in which we would be contributing to the capacity development of institutions, by just signaling, this is an area where lifelong learning from the perspective of a university could be further developed. Are you doing this? Not? Why? And then, the next step would be really to supplement this with opportunities for capacity development. that could be easily developed from the institute. So if you need really to unfold further this as a result of this self-assessment tool, engage with us in a training program, which by its very definition should be the result of a pure learning opportunity rather than having experts coming and telling people what to do. I think that learning from other universities with whom you share the content could be really a major step forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Yes, Tom. And then here.
I don't know if someone else. Yes. So we. Term delegate. Then well, we have a lot of this. So let's just go fast. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so in Norway there's a central database on statistics for higher education that is maintained by the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills. And I checked it before going here to see how is lifelong learning monitored. And I also asked them because we couldn't find much. I realized that the main focus is on the variety of programs, the student enrollment, grades, and the study progress. And study progress is monitored by the standard parameters, completion according to standardized time, and dropout rates. Now, when we know that lifelong learning has to be provided in flexible ways, we might need to consider to change the success